So Olivia has been dreaming of becoming a police detective since childhood. And look at her now. She's graduating from the police academy. But before she gets hired to be a real detective, she has to go through a tricky quest to prove her skills. A missing bag. Her first task was to help a young woman in a shopping mall. Her bag disappeared while she was choosing a toy for her little nephew. Olivia found 3 suspects. I was getting groceries when it happened," said Noah. "I was with my son in the shopping mall playground," claimed Sophia. I was in the cafe, getting my daily dose of caffeine," stated Jackson. Olivia didn't need much time to figure out who had taken the bag. Do you know who it was? It was Sophia. She couldn't be on the playground with her son because people older than 14 aren't allowed in there. An airport mystery. Olivia's next case was at the airport. A furious traveler claimed the contents of his baggage had disappeared. "When I got my suitcase, it was empty. I want you to compensate for what I've lost." After checking the passenger's info, Olivia found out that he had, indeed, left London with a heavy suitcase, and now his bag was empty and a bit wet. The whole situation was suspicious, but the future detective couldn't figure out what it was. Ha! She got it! It was a setup. Can you figure out what happened? The passenger left London with a suitcase full of ice. During the flight, the ice melted, and the man demanded compensation for the lost belongings. Which factory? Olivia was sent to a small town to investigate a case. The town's inhabitants claimed that one of the 3 factories in the area was polluting the water in a local lake, but no one could understand which factory it was. Olivia visited all of them and took pictures. In the evening, she examined the photos she had. Suddenly, she realized which factory had been causing the problems. Look at the pictures Olivia had taken and try to figure it out too. It's not the first factory. It looks long abandoned and not functioning at all. The 3rd factory isn't too bad. The trees growing around are healthy. Olivia also saw some fish in the lake close to that place. But the trees near the 2nd factory are scarce and look unhealthy, meaning this one is the factory polluting the water. A missing runner. The next case Olivia had to crack was connected with marathon runners. One of them, a girl called Chloe, disappeared right before the competition. Olivia questioned her competitors. "I haven't seen Chloe today. I was at home, sleeping and resting before the competition," said Zoe. It was Victoria's turn to answer the questions. "I was going to meet with Chloe at a cafe near the gym, but she canceled the meeting. She needed to visit her makeup artist. She was going on a date after the marathon. I brought Chloe some sandwiches in the morning, and I haven't seen her since then," said Lily. Olivia knew a thing or two about running a marathon. She immediately arrested the suspect. Who was it? It was Victoria. Even if Chloe had flawless makeup before the competition, it wouldn't last even an hour. There was no sense in doing it before the marathon. Hidden treasure. Olivia was so exhausted after solving several cases at a time that she fell asleep right at her table. When she woke up, she found herself in a dark room with no windows, a locked door, and a table. On the table, there was a piece of paper with several red letters on it, UCTION. Olivia was a smart girl. She needed less than a minute to find the answer to this rebus. And how much time will you need? The word hidden in the rebus is reduction. After Olivia wrote it down on the paper, the door opened immediately. Which door? Olivia found herself in another room. Again, no windows. But this time, there were 3 doors leading out of the room. Suddenly, a big screen on the wall, which Olivia hadn't noticed before, lit up. The girl said, Behind each of these doors there is some danger. The first door leads to a scorching hot desert. Several steps and the sun will burn you. Behind the second door there is an alligator that hasn't eaten for a year. And the third door hides a pool with icy water. To get to freedom, you'll have to swim through it. To cut a long story short, Olivia managed to get out of the room. Which door did she choose? Alligators can indeed go without food for up to 3 years, meaning the creature behind the second door is hungry and dangerous. Freezing water can cause cold shock in an unprepared swimmer. That's why Olivia chose the first door. She waited for the sun to go down and walked through the desert. An ancient vase, or vase, take your pick. The next day, Olivia came to a museum. Someone distracted the guard and took a priceless ancient vase. After watching the security footage, Olivia had 4 suspects. She questioned them, but everyone denied visiting the museum. Grace said she had taken part in a beauty contest in another town. Jack claimed he had been on a fishing trip with his friends. Addison told Olivia she wasn't interested in art and never visited museums. And Christopher said he was a pilot and had had a flight that day. One of them is lying, but who? Christopher is wearing super thick glasses, and he bumped into a door on his way in. Pilots can't have such bad eyesight. A flooded pit. To fulfill her next challenge, Olivia had to go through a dense forest. While walking, she heard suspicious sounds, got distracted, and fell into a rather deep pit. All of a sudden, it started pouring. The pit was filling with water alarmingly fast. And Olivia had one secret – she couldn't swim. The girl looked around and spotted several objects lying nearby. A thick, long rope, a big ball, and a saw. What did Olivia choose to get out of the pit? The girl picked the ball. It floated, and so did she. A business trip. Olivia's friend Nora called and asked her to come. The woman was crying. She said it had to do with her husband, Jacob. When our future detective arrived, she heard the following story. Jacob told me he had to go on a business trip to the mountains. He didn't really want to travel there because he hates cold weather. But it was business, so he had to. He packed tons of warm clothes and left. When Jacob arrived there, he sent me a photo from a cafe. But I feel something's wrong with this picture. I just can't get what exactly. Olivia needed no more than a glance at the photo, and she knew Jacob had lied to his wife. How did she figure it out? You can see palm trees outside the window, and they don't grow in a cold climate. Who's the most reckless? Olivia had to decide which one of the 3 young people were the most reckless. It didn't take the future detective much time to figure it out. And what's your opinion? The girl on the left is no doubt super careless, but her absent-mindedness won't cost her more than a lost bag. The girl in the middle isn't the brightest star in the sky as well. Poking a snake, really? Luckily, most snakes try to avoid people. Plus, this one might be non-venomous. But the guy on the right is bound to fall into the maintenance hole and hurt himself. A warehouse fire. Someone set Mr. Allen's warehouse on fire. This successful businessman was sure his competitors were behind the arson. Olivia came to investigate the case. 3 people had been spotted near the warehouse before the fire started. Mr. Moore, the lawyer, claimed he had just dropped by to leave some documents. James, a construction worker, said he had come to fix some problems with the fence around the warehouse. He didn't pay attention to anything else. It was too hot, and he wanted to finish his task as soon as possible. Alex, Mr. Allen's brother, explained he had come to settle a disagreement they had had the day before. Yes, I was angry, but I wouldn't do such a thing to my brother. None of these people had matches or a lighter to set the fire. But after thinking for a while, Olivia understood who was to blame. It was Mr. Moore. He used his glasses to start the fire. Congrats, Olivia! You've successfully passed all the challenges. Tomorrow, you're going to get down to real work.